No event like this in Gujarat can be complete without talking about dairy. The Honorable Minister just mentioned about the importance of dairy in Gujarat, and our next section is going to be on strengthening milk production and distribution supply chain through mini dairies. And we have an international speaker from Australia who is there with us today, Dr. Philip Chamberlain. He is a veterinary consultant with over 25 years tropical dairy development, production, genetics, health management, and strategic planning expertise in Northern Australia, Asia, Europe. Sir, you can come and share your technical presentation.
Thank you. It's an honour to be asked to come and speak to you, and I really appreciate it. So, my name's Philip Chamberlain. I'm from Australia. And I've been asked to speak about mini dairy as a way to improve your dairy industry. So I have a private consulting company, and part of that work is to manage Dairy Australia's Northern Research Program. So it's a bit like your Dairy Development Board. So I manage all the North Australian or the tropical dairy research in Australia. I also work with a company. We develop a lot of genetics, tropically adapted dairy genetics through IVF technology mainly. And I work with another company. We develop large dairy systems mainly in Asia. So a little bit about myself. I won't speak too long on this. I grew up on a dairy farm, so I was a dairy farmer from the age of 16 until I was 23. And then I studied veterinary science in Australia. I've worked in foot and mouth disease outbreaks around the world. I currently lecture at Queensland University in intensive dairy management and disease control. I manage the subtropical dairy program. I also currently are developing a veterinary school in Vietnam with a focus on improving capacity for biosecurity and sanitary, phytosanitary programs for Vietnam to be able to export more animal food products. And we're just about to start another program in Cambodia with respect to improving people capacity to manage their biosecurity better. We've just finished a project in Kenya looking at helping the Kenyan government develop disease surveillance programs, and we've just finished a program in Delhi or around New Delhi to develop a new large dairy farming system there. The typical Australian dairy farm picture, so we often have kangaroos running with cows. We don't milk the kangaroos. So just a few pictures. So I run development programs for farmers and for undergraduates and for postgraduates. We have lots of different dairy systems in Australia, and mini dairy is also an important part of the Australian dairy system, and I'll talk to you about that. I was involved in the foot and mouth outbreak in Britain. I'm involved in dairy development and academic development in Vietnam and Malaysia. I do a lot of work up in China, in large dairy systems up there, not so much small dairy systems, but large dairy systems, working with a company with 80,000 dairy cows. So that's enough about me. So I was asked to speak about mini dairy, and I'm not sure how many of you really understand the definition of mini dairy, and I think the definition can change depending on where you are. So, but this is my definition of... This is my definition of mini dairy. It's really about helping farmers or farmer groups or small cooperatives or small collaboration of people to be able to develop small-scale processing operations to value add to their milk. It can be individual farmers, and we've looked at many farms in Australia and helped them develop up their own milk processing plants, and some of them have been incredibly successful, others have been an absolute failure. So what I want to talk to you about today is my experience with what works well and what doesn't work well. So what are the advantages of mini dairy? And mini dairy is trying to value add to milk, and it doesn't have to be processing, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. So it's about trying to improve the income of the farmer, improve the value of his or her product, or the farmer group or the village. It's better utilisation of the farm and the people and the labour. So you've got the same amount of people, the same amount of farms, but it's trying to get more value from that farming system. It usually ends up improving the quality of the product, the milk quality. It always ends up improving the farmer's ability to manage their animals, husbandry and production. So those animals are generally more productive, which means that they give more product for the same amount of feed. Improve production, improve skills and management. So these farms are generally, once they start to get into processing or getting into value adding their product, they become better at farming, better at producing a quality product. I'm not a dairy processing expert. My expertise is at the farming end, not so much the processing end, but as there's plenty of milk processing experts here. And that's just one example of someone I've worked with in India. I'll focus on the business development aspect. What makes these small processing or value-adding systems work, and what makes them fail? So I'll talk about one experience I've had in Sabah, East Malaysia. It was to assist a group of farmers who already had a milk cooperative. There was about 20 farmers, I think, who sold their milk as a cooperative to a milk processor, and they wanted to pasteurise their own and package their own product and sell it locally. So that project had started before I was there. And so other people had pulled this project together and said, we will help this group of farmers develop a plan to process their own product, make more money, value add. My role was to make sure that the product that went into that processing plant was of better quality. So I was running a dairy development system up in Sabah at the time, and we used this as a pilot to improve mastitis management, to improve milk components through nutrition, to improve product keeping quality through better milking hygiene and management. So my role was to make sure that the milk product going into this system was better. What happened? It was, from one respect, it was a complete failure because there was no funding sourced, there was no processing plant purchased. However, what did happen was, through our efforts to improve milk quality, that cooperative was able to package that milk unpasteurised and sell it for a higher price than their competition and what they'd been selling it for before. So even without milk processing, this group was able to value add their product through improved quality. So it does not have to be processing. There's other ways that you can improve the value of your product. So what was the learnings from that was there really needs to be better planning. And this is what it's all about. If you're going to develop up a mini dairy, which is about developing up a milk processing, a small on-farm or a small milk processing plant, it has to be planned and managed well. And that's what I'm going to talk about. It's about developing the business model and the plan, even if it's only small. If you don't go through this process, if you don't plan to succeed, you plan to fail. And so it's about the planning process that we're talking about. So these are just tips that I've learnt through this sort of system. You've got to have someone who drives the project, an interested person who's really passionate about the project that's going to make it work. This could be a farmer, and through most of this I'm going to be talking about, in my experience, it's mainly groups of 8 or 10 farmers, small farmers, who are getting together to develop up a small processing plant to value add their product. So, but someone's got to drive that. You've got to define what the product is or will be in demand. So you've got to be able to say, look, in 12 months' time, this is the product I'm going to be producing because people want it. It could, and what is that? It might be, people might buy the product because it's locally produced. You really need to look at your market fairly close to where you are. You don't want to be transporting your product too far. Are you going to be developing an existing product or a new product? Are you going to be using cow's milk or buffalo milk? What do you have? What are you going to be able to sell? What will be your market advantage? Why will people buy that product in preference to what you sold before or in preference to what someone else is going to sell? So you've got to understand what your market advantage is. And it could be there's a market gap. It could be that no one is producing flavoured milk, or no one's producing lassi, or no one's producing a type of yogurt in that area. So there could be a market gap. It could be a completely new product, a completely different flavoured product. In Australia, for example, a lot of the small farms have gone into producing soft cheeses like the French or the European cheeses because there was a real market gap in Australia, and they've been very successful. Are people going to buy the product because it's a safer product? Maybe you could sell it, you say, well, this product does not have to be boiled. Boiling will change the flavour. Try this product, it's safe without boiling it. Could be different types of protein in the product. Could be lots of different things. So you've got to understand what your market advantage is for that group. Do some market analysis. And so you really got to go out, ask people what they'd buy, test your market. You've got to understand what the likely volumes are going to be. How much are you going to be able to sell in 1 or 2 years' time, in 3 to 4 years' time? How big is this going to get? And what's the best packaging for your product? It may be no packaging is necessary. You still may be able to sell your milk at that farm gate, but it's of better quality. So understand what type of packaging you want, or do you need to package the product? Keep it simple. Then, once you understand what you're going to produce, what people are going to buy, how much they're going to buy, you have to understand what you need in your system to be able to produce that. So it's about understanding what assets and equipment you're going to need to produce, process, distribute. It's going to be all that, you're going to have to take over all that process. So, and it's really understanding, if you're going into pasteurising, understand what the cost of that equipment is. And it's very important to keep your process as simple as possible. And also, particularly in India, there's a lot of second-hand equipment available that's generally very good. Determine what the milk supply is. You might have 10 farmers. What's their current production? What can they increase to in 5 years' time? Understand that base. Can you bring more farmers on board? Is the current milk quality suitable to produce that product? That is one of the most important things. It's understanding your milk quality. Don't get too big too quickly. And this happened in Australia with a number of people. They grew very quickly, borrowed a lot of money, reached a point where the market didn't grow, but they had capacity to produce 10 times that volume, and it was not successful. So keep it simple. Keep the time frames achievable. Don't say you're going to be selling 3,000 tonnes of product in 2 years' time when you really know that's not true. Establish an initial business model. What's it going to look like? How much will you be producing? What will you be producing? How are you going to distribute it? Who will manage the business? Who is going to be the driver? Try and keep the labour to a minimum. Try and use the farmers and the farmers' wives and the farmers' children as they are being used now, but use them more effectively. If you're going to start to employ labour, you've got to cost that. You've got to understand what that cost is. Site, are you going to use a farm for that processing site, or are you going to buy land to build a processing plant? Are you going to rent land? All that has to be costed. define the procedure. So it's about who is going to supply what and when. So who's responsible for doing that? Who's responsible for producing that product? Who's responsible for bringing the milk into that centre? Who's responsible for running your plant? And to what procedures do you do that? Another very interesting thing here is that with the development of these small processing systems, some of the larger milk processors get very nervous because they think they're going to lose supply. But what tends to happen is the ones that become successful produce a lot more product that they can sell. And it's generally a much better quality. So for the larger milk processors, it's often a source of better quality milk for specific purposes. So don't be afraid to talk to your larger milk processors about the system that you're going to build, because it could be in their benefit too. Develop a 5-year business plan, including the cost, the capital cost, how much money you're going to need, the time frame. You're going to need all that money in the first year or in the first 6 months. How quickly you're going to need that money. The returns on a timeline. How quickly are you going to get returns to cover your operating costs? And so if you think, oh, I'm not going to have enough money to cover my operating costs in the first 2 years, you need to have access to that money. How quickly is that going to be paid back? How quickly are you going to get a return on your investment? You need to know all this. Find the funding. So have a well-established business plan and model in place. Document it. Is it going to be government, private? The farmer's going to fund it themselves. What's the time frame on this? Define the expectations that are on the farmers, and this is a huge issue. You'll get 10 farmers together with no documentation, and then 2 years down the track, one farmer says, I'm not going to produce any more milk, and so you've lost maybe 10 or 20% of your milk production, and you can't do anything about it. So it's about the farmers signing up to a process that they understand what their responsibility is. And this is one of the most important things, what quality of product are you going to have coming into your system? How are you going to keep that quality good? So it's saying to farmers, if you don't produce milk of that quality or of that with those components, the protein and the fat, you'll be paid less. Or you can say, if you can produce above this, you'll be paid more. And without those sort of systems in place, it's very difficult to guarantee quality product coming into your system. And then you develop an implementation strategy with timeframes, develop a monitoring strategy. You've got to be able to say, we're not, say 6 months down the track, are we where we want to be? Or are we behind? Once you've started your production, it's about saying, yes, we're producing what we thought we would, but we're not getting the amount of money, or you've got to be able to monitor your progress. Important points. Keep it simple. These systems must be as simple as possible. Try not to spend too much money on capital equipment. Sorry, time? Yep, nearly finished. Have sufficient capital, especially to cover your operating costs. Use farm labour as much as possible. Work with people who are professional and have vision. So make sure the people you're working with have the same vision as yourself. Focus on good milk quality. This is one of the most important factors. You can't make good processed product from poor quality milk. And this is a big problem. So you've got to have quality milk coming into these systems. Have enough supply. Be conservative with your market. Don't overestimate your market. There's a bit of a balance here, but it's one of the problems I see is when people are trying to get government funding, they put a business plan together that sounds absolutely fantastic, and they've really overinflated their market. Establish binding contracts between the participants, so people cannot just pull out when it suits them. And set goals. This, I think, mini dairy is a big opportunity for India, because we'll end up improving milk quality, we'll end up improving farmer income. What I think you do need to make this happen is some templates from the government that can help farmers understand the process they need to go through to make this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We have got some time for some few question answers for the technical speakers. If anybody has any questions, then let me move to the next panel discussion. We have You have a question? Okay, please shoot. He is not, let me see if he is here first. Is he here first? Let us see that.
Excuse me, sir. I am Aswani here, a consultant in food processing, and my question is. Excuse me for that.
Mr. Kohli is not here. I think he has left. He is coming? Kohli sir? Acha, he is coming. Yes, what's your question?
So the question is the economics of irrigation as related to potatoes and onions.
He is not there. Dr. Kohli is not there. He is coming. Okay. Any other question to any of the other two panelists? Mr. Philip is here. You can ask him.
My question is to Mr. Philip. How economies of scale in a small scale dairy enterprise is important for a small farmer with having 2 to 4 cows and with a low productivity? How economies of scale is important?
Yes, that's a really important point. I think, to be honest, if you've got 2 to 4 cows, milk processing is difficult to justify the cost. It's not impossible. You can boil, for example, you can do lots of things that don't require a lot of expensive equipment. But what you can do, and what I've seen happen, is improve milk quality. So if you can improve your components through nutrition, so improve your butter fat or increase your protein level, you can do that through nutrition and animal management. If you can improve your milk quality, particularly in relation to bacterial contamination, and that's a matter of understanding milking hygiene, and then you've got to be able to market it too. So it's about, it's not. I have seen it happen, and that example in Malaysia was one example where we had 12 farmers, and all they managed to do was improve their milk quality, and that worked. And I think that can work on a smaller scale. The problem is convincing people to buy it because you think it's better. Very difficult at a very small scale to justify spending money. So you in that case, you've got to have a group of people. But then the problem is that all those people agreeing on what happens. So very, very difficult.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, please. Wow. Wow.
My name is Mohit Mehta. I came with the farmer who is growing the cotton in Gujarat, thanks to the Gujarat government and their policies. He has grown from 35 acres to 460 acres and taken advantage of subsidies as well. So he's very happy. But his question is the power shortage, how in Kutch, how to mitigate the power problem, and it should be continuously available to the farmers.
I was wanting the questions to be on the 3 technical sessions you had.
Okay.
So if there is any question on the 3 speakers, that was in my mind. Yes. Then we'll start with the next panel discussion. Can I have Ms. Meena on the stage, please? Come. Meena is from CNBC, and we have a very distinguished panel with us, and I'll try and call each of the panelists on the dais. They are with us. Of course, Mr. Siraj Hussain is also on the dais, and I'd like to introduce him. Mr. Hussain is Ministry of Food Processing Secretary, and we have been interacting with him in the past few months, I would say. And I'm very happy to say that he made, on behalf of industry and government, a presentation recently before the Prime Minister in the Make in India program. And it was music to our ears. He is really championing the cause of the industry. It's my duty to a little bit read out something about him. Mr. Siraj Hussain joined the IAS in 1979. He was allotted Uttar Pradesh cadre. He served the government of Uttar Pradesh in various capacities including District Magistrate, GM UP Finance Corporation, Managing Director of UP State Industrial Development Corporation. He was also posted at the State Secretariat in the Department of Energy, Education and Panchayat Raj. He served the Government of India in various capacities including Deputy Managing Director of National Cooperative Development Corporation, Joint Secretary in the Department of Food and Public Distribution and Chairman cum Managing Director of the Food Corporation of India, where he had a very successful tenure. He also served 5 years as the Vice Chancellor of the Jamia Hamdard University in New Delhi, which specializes in courses in Unani medicine, pharmacy, biological sciences and allied health sciences. Since 2013, he is Secretary in the Ministry of Food Processing, and they have done various things for industry, including launching a portal and a lot of other things. Thank you, sir, for being part of this panel. We have Dr. Kevin, but I don't think he's here. We have Mr. Santosh Sarangi here. Sir, please. Mr. Santosh Sarangi is Chairman of APEDA. APEDA is the catalyst for growth of agri-exports. Since many years, which industries has appreciated. Mr. Santosh Sarangi is MA and MPhil and an IAS officer. He has served government in various positions such as Commissioner and Secretary Department of Tribal Affairs, Odisha, joined as Joint Secretary in the Department of Commerce, Ministry of Commerce and Industry with additional charge of Chairman APEDA. As we know, sir, APEDA has been the championing the food processing export cause since long. And the best way to see APEDA in action is the Gulf Food, which is happening next month. And the amount of efforts APEDA puts in for participation abroad in stalls and for mango exports, we really laud it as industry. I have Mr. Srinivas Garudachar. So we'll disrupt our panel. Srinivas is here? Yes. We have Mr. Srinivas Garudachar, Director, Grameen Intel Social Business. Come, Srinivas. Srinivas is the Director of Strategic Business Development. He is a very passionate and committed social entrepreneur and an accomplished ICT professional with a strong competence of innovating and applying appropriate technology interventions for maximizing business and for social advantage. I think you will give the social perspective in this whole panel. Thanks. Okay, you can come there.
I think you forgot this gentleman there.
I'm calling everybody, don't worry. Yes, I'm just calling you. We have Dr. Kevin Gallagher. Dr. Kevin is the face of FAO in India and is a PhD of entomology from University of California at Berkeley. He has worked in many other countries and has got many awards, including B.R. Sen Award, Venn Dashboard Award. Dr. Kevin Gallagher, please. And now our very own Dr. Vasant Gandhi, who is the professor of IIM Ahmedabad. He holds a PhD from Stanford University and a management postgraduate from IIM Ahmedabad. He has worked with World Bank Intellectual Food Policy Research Institute. He is currently chairman of IIMN Center for Management and Agriculture. He is recipient of many awards. He is on the boards of many companies. Welcome, Dr. Vasant Gandhi. When I read through the biodata, I really have come to a conclusion. He is the best research scientist in the country, Dr. Rajasekharan. He is a PhD in Institute of Science. He is a director of CFTRI and Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. So, welcome. Under his leadership, the industry is reiterating his leadership in the research in the whole sector. Dr. Rajasekharan is chairman of various expert committees and task force. He has authored 53 publications, 9 patents, 2 academic books to his credit. And I'm sure we look forward to your address. And we have with us on the panel Mr. Rajkumar also. Mr. Rajkumar is Principal Secretary Agriculture and Corporation Department, Government of Gujarat. Mr. Rajkumar has 24 years of experience in public administration, including 12 years in policy making. He is Principal Secretary since 2013. He has 3 publications to his credit. More than anything else, he is the architect of today's program, sir. We thank you. This is definitely a government program. And we in industry look forward to the next agro policy being announced under your leadership, sir. That is something we are looking for. And thank you for being panel in the panel. Meena, you can start. The CM is coming. Acha. The two ministers are there. No, it was. No, these two ministers are there extra. That's all. The two ministers. Let them be there. There are two ministers of the state government. These are two ministers are only extra, nothing else.
No, which one? Mr. Rajkumar?
These are all the panelists.
No, we have these 6.
And now you add Rajkumar.
Yeah, and
That's it. Nobody
that's
else.
it. No?
Dr. Kevin Garigner, you have got.
Yeah.
Me, you have got. That's it. Have you got Ben? Please join hands in welcoming our Honorable Chief Minister of Gujarat, Shri Anandibin Patel. Under your leadership, we had a very, very good inaugural today. And this vibrant has become the best amongst all the vibrants we have seen so far. My job will be now to announce the MOU. And I would like Dr. Rajkumar to give a bouquet. And the first MOU is Messrs. Arcon Gamma Irradiators, Mr. Naresh Sheladia, and he is going to sign an MOU with Dr. B.R. Shah. This is for agro and food processing. Also, SS Ice Cream can come and wait. The second MOU is between SS Ice Cream Private Limited, Shri Jagdish Bhai Akbari, and Mr. Abhay Jain from GIC would sign. Ankur Seed is next. Ankur. The third MOU is between Ankur Seeds Private Limited, Shri Vijay Govind Kashilkar, Director, and Mr. Chandrasekhar will sign with Shri S.R. Chaudhary, Director of Agriculture. Fourth one is for a food park which we are all awaiting. Zalwad Mega Food Park Private Limited, Shri Sanjay Patel will sign with Mr. Shubodh Shah. Zeal, fifth MOU is Messrs. Zeal Aqua Private Limited. Shri Shanti Patel will sign the MOU with Shri P.L. Darbar, Commissioner of Fisheries. The next MOU is between APMC Surat, Shri Ramanbhai Patel, Chairman of the APNC, with Shri M.A. Narmanwala, IAS, Commissioner of Corporation, Register of Cooperative Societies. Surat. The seventh MOU is Shri Surat District Cooperative Milk Producers Union, GS Desai MD, will sign with Shri A.G. Kachia Patel, Director of Animal Husbandry. The eighth MOU is Sir Ratan Tata and Navajip Tata Trust, Mr. Barzis Tarapurwala, will sign the MOU with Shri G.K. Gadvi, Deputy Commissioner of Tribal Development. This is an MOU which is very unique because in the field of tribal development. The ninth MOU is between CIPET Ahmedabad, Dr. Pradeep Upadhyay, and Shri P.B. Brahmbhatt, Chief Executive Development Support Agency of Gujarat. This is a very unique MOU because this talks of what our Prime Minister talked of in the morning, skill development. And they are going to come up with a full center on a PPP mode of skill development. And the earlier MOU actually was going to touch the life of around 60,000 households, poor families in Gujarat. And as I mentioned earlier also, this is one sector where you can do a lot of things for the social side and the tribal side. And these two MOUs actually prove what I was saying a few hours back. We come to our MOU number 10, which is Kudamashiri National Resource Organization, Srimati K.B. Valas Kumari, will sign with Shri A.G. Shah, MD of GLPC. Once again, this MOUs will touch 48,000 families with self-help groups. Once again, which is really important. The 11th and the last one is the National Bank of Agriculture and Rural Development, NABARD, Shri M.K. Mudgal, with Shri A.G. Shah, MG of GLPC. Okay. The DMD, Dr. H.R. Dave is also there. He will also sign. The MOU will be for training and capacity building in the rural development sector for self-help groups. We'll have a photo session. The first three can come on stage for a photo session, followed by the next three, followed by the next three. Last would be two probably. First three. Messrs. Aircon, Messrs. SS Ice Cream, Messrs. Ankur Seeds. The next three can come on stage very fast. Zalawad Mega, Z Lekwa, and APMC. The next three, Surat District Cooperative, Sir Ratan Tata Trust, and SIPET. There you go. And now, Messrs. Kudamashri National Resource Corporation and NABARD. Is ready. Yes, over. Last two. Very good. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your. are gone already, don't worry. આ છે ને આખું લિસ્ટ લો તમને જોઈશ ત્યાંથી લે ને બીજું હશે ને હું આપું બીજું
Check, 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 check.
We are just starting the panel discussions. If you can just bear with us. Ma'am, you can start.
हटाओ म्यूट कर देना
Hello, hello.
Mic with, yeah, it's muted. So you have to just share the mic. Sir, chair it.
Hello, hello. Hello, a warm welcome to everybody to Vibrant Gujarat 2015. Today we are discussing the theme of this seminar, that is the innovation and technology for sustainability in food processing. So I would just request all of you to not stand or to move because the cameras are there. This is being recorded for television. Okay, I would start with Mr. Hussain. Mr. Hussain, today we know that about more than 60% of our population depends on agriculture. But would you say they are facing a lot of problems. So what would you say is being done to make agriculture profitable?
It is a very complex subject. because the number of people dependent on agriculture is going down. The share of agriculture in the GDP is going down. And yet, there are several sectors of agriculture which have done very well in the last 10 or 15 years. So commercial agriculture has come to certain sectors like cotton, certain crops in horticulture, and also certain other horticultural crops. But I fully agree that marketing of agricultural produce remains a big challenge, and we are yet to find an answer to provide seamless availability of raw material for retail market as well as for processing industry.
Okay, so what are the first, 2-3 or initial steps that the government is taking today to really improve largely the profitability of farmers, because that is where they always find the pricing very unremunerative, and that is where the problem starts.
As far as pricing is concerned, for 18 major crops, the minimum support prices are recommended by the Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices, and the government determines the support price. But there are only 2 commodities, or 3 if we include maize, wheat, rice and maize, which are procured by the government. Other agricultural commodities are not procured by the government, and so it is entirely dependent on market forces. But the Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices does take into account the cost of production, including the labor cost, the imputed cost of labor, and even the cost of the land as if it is rented out. So these costs are taken into account, but it is quite true that for some crops in some states, the price may not be as attractive as it is in other states. So there is a lot of complexity because many people feel that the prices are not attractive enough. On the other hand, many economists in the recent past have been arguing that the government has been fixing prices which are too high. So this is a debate which I think Professor Gandhi may be able to throw some light upon. But as far as I am concerned, my own position is that there is a need to support agriculture, there is a need to support the farmers, and to take every possible step to minimize distress sale of major agricultural products.
Professor Gandhi, you want to add to that? Oh, sorry.
No, I agree with Mr. Siraj. You're saying that price support is extremely important for the farmer. The farmers are small and they can't take the price fluctuations, which can be very, very large at times. So they do need help. And if we want them to be productive over the years, to raise the production over the years, price support plays a very, very important role. This was amply proved at the time of the Green Revolution, which initially was without price support. And the prices crashed and the farmers moved out of the good technology. But when the price support was brought in, then the real revolution started and we started doing extremely well.
Okay. Dr. Kevin, you have studied a lot of the Asian countries. In your view, what is it that India is doing right and what is it that they are doing wrong?
Well, let's say not doing wrong, but not doing yet.
Okay, fine.
There's a lot of good things that's going on in India, of course. The technology is very good. There's lots of good missions for horticulture, missions for sustainable agriculture, these types of things. But perhaps one of the things that's missing is a little bit more of the extension service. And of course, the old ways of doing extension are getting more difficult because it's expensive to put people out in the field. And also many of the extension officers are actually working to deliver these subsidies. But I think perhaps Dr. Srinivas can also talk about the use of ICTs, for example. We're working on a program called Smartphones for Smart Farming. A lot of people can look at videos from Digital Green, for example, and get some good ideas from farmers or from professors or from research institutions that will help them to farm better.
So Srinivas, how would you say technology can really come into agriculture and largely food processing that we are talking of today?
Thank you. First of all, we are a social business which has got the heritage of Intel, which is the largest chip manufacturing company, not the potato chip, but the semiconductor chip. And Grameen of Bangladesh, which is a social business of the Grameen Bank fame. Our idea is to use technology to solve poverty-related problems. And when you talk about poverty in the world, farming and poverty is sort of interlinked, you know. They're on the opposite sides of the spectrum, but they are very close to each other. Farmers have many problems that they need to be faced. First of all, they're very fragmented, disconnected. There's a whole disconnected value chain out there. So technology can actually connect these dots that are there and bring these various, the input suppliers, you may call them seeds, fertilizers, pest control methods, exchange of knowledge, access to markets, reduce costs. Those are the kinds of things that technology can bring to the table. Of course, it has to be accompanied by business models and extension services like Kevin was talking about. And we've developed various kinds of easy-to-use products which are on the mobile phone, for example, that can be used by entrepreneurs in the village to deliver various services that can provide better, let's say, understanding of soil nutrition, access to the right kind of inputs, seeds, fertilizers, whatnot, for particular crops, getting access to markets, and various such things. And in terms of food processing, it's very important that the source side is a very important thing. Farmer is very key. In India, for example, you have 70% small and marginal farmers of the whole population, and they're key to the survival of the whole country in terms of feeding us, but more so in terms of crucialness of the farmers' existence, prosperity, and so on, for food processing to exist even, So it's very important that in order for food processing, that the farmers themselves are kept viable, kept going, and they increase strength to strength rather than migrate out of farming into the urban areas and whatnot. That itself is a very key thing, and technology, like I said, does provide this impetus in terms of reducing the costs, improving the transactional ability, increasing the knowledge, mitigating the risks, and so on. And we've already worked in terms of public-private partnership with governments in different countries. We've been partnering with the United Nations, with various national governments in several countries, and we hope that we can extend the same in Gujarat as well.
Mrs. Santosh, you are coming from an organization that is, concentrating on the exports of processed food. So what is the situation today, and what are the steps that we are taking to really increase our exports of farm products?
Presently, almost out of the $22 billion of export which is happening in the agri and processed food segment, the processed food contribution would be about 35 to 40%. But if we discount the primary processed items like rice, wheat flour and all, then purely in processed food, processed fruit and vegetable segment, the growth as such has been fairly good at a rate of nearly 20%. But we must understand that it's on a low base. So both taken together, processed fruit and vegetable as well as processed food, our total export is less than $2 billion. There is a huge potential for this to go up further, and a lot of investment has come in the last couple of years. A lot of FDI is coming into food processing sector. Within our country, many of the corporate groups are now coming in and investing. ITC is now lining up about 1,000 crore of investment. Hector Beverages is now lining up a lot of money into juice and juice concentrate facilities. So I'm sure in the next couple of years, India will emerge as a much better exporter of processed food as well as processed fruits and vegetables. We have also seen clusters like Mahova in Gujarat, which have developed as clusters for dehydrated onion, dehydrated garlic. And I'm sure in the days to come,
similar clusters are going to come up in different parts of the country, and that will facilitate our agri-exports in a much better manner.
Professor Ram, you come from a research institute. So what is the kind of research and what is the kind of technology that is needed in Indian farming and food processing today?
Okay, before coming to food processing, let us look at the food security. As a nation, we are the strongest in agriculture. We produce enough cereal and pulses, but we produce almost no oil to eat. We always import 63% of our consumption actually comes from outside. Now the question is very simple, is it why we are, even though we are the mightiest agricultural country, why we are unable to produce oils, vegetable oils for our own consumption? It is one of the biggest food security point of view. We have to depend on only import. If only the import, the research has to really focus more on trying to bring new type of oil seeds which will solve this problem for this nation. It is the one of the part which we need to look at it. In addition, even urbanization is going very high. At this time, we are really prone to many of those lifestyle diseases. We are not looking at the nutrition security of our nation. We have been only looking at food security on one end, and food security, we reach the food security with respect to cereal and pulses, even vegetable and fruits, but not on one area. But we need to really look at very seriously what is the nutritional security which we are going to give, because that security is also important. It will really reduce a lot of, we call it as the impact on the existing social system. And we need to focus much more on the nutrition security along with food security. That should be the future focus of the research. Do you have any other question?
Feroz, if I can bring you in here. Now, we have today signed 278 MOUs Gujarat has signed, okay? Now, as I see them, got the thing, that most of them, a lot of them are in food parks. And the government is also concentrating on mega food parks. So how is this whole food park concept going to take off in India?
It has taken some time, but I think it's taken up pretty well. And I think if you ask me, actually we should, in this thing, thank the government of India for this mega food park scheme, especially the secretary who is sitting here, because they are working very hard to ensure that the scheme is modulated in such a manner that it helps a lot of people. And I think it's a mistaken identity. It will only help the producers and the end marketers like us or manufacturers like us. It also helps the farmers, because in the scheme there is something like a primary processing center and then a secondary processing center. So when you have a mega food park, you are supposed to have primary processing centers in various farms. So here is the issue which you were probably the first question. If the farmer doesn't have to worry, if there is a primary processing center there, his agri-produce can straight go there at a given price, is semi-processed so it doesn't get wasted, which a lot of it, and then it gets it into the bigger mega part for the secondary food. There is also a common effluent treatment plants, common packaging, common R&D, common labs, certification, all inside the park. And that is the beauty of the scheme. And the government has subsidized in terms of money and a lot of other things. The problem right now, if you ask me, is not with the central government, while slightly the parks are not taken off the way we wanted, actually speaking. And that is also because of the state laws. And that's what I call ease of doing business. Mostly they are stuck in because of land issues at the state levels. So I think we will really need to now take the reforms, not from the center, but the state levels, to have these parks which have really been sanctioned to really happen in a bigger way. That's what I believe.
Okay. Mr. Rajkumar, could you add here on mega food parks? How are we going to take that concept forward?
Actually, we are working under the guidance of Government of India, and state government is also promoting mega food parks. As a matter of fact, in addition to the subsidies that Government of India provides, our state policy also provides additional subsidy, capital subsidy, because we know this is infrastructure which needs a lot of investment, and investors need to be promoted. As a result of that, today you saw that we had signed one MOU with Messrs. Jalabad Mega Food Parks. In fact, there are a couple of more such food parks which are in the pipeline, and I am sure in the time to come, Government of India's scheme is really good, and we need to promote mega food parks. Mr. Piruz raised the issue of land laws, and that is something which, as a country, we have to address that issue, because land acquisition is a big issue in the whole country, There is a big debate which is going on between industry and agriculture, the pricing, the remunerative price to the farmer. So I believe in due course of time, these issues would get resolved. And as rightly said, many more such mega food parks are needed. Gujarat is very well placed in this regard, and I am sure with the kind of enterprising spirit that our people have, it should not be difficult to have a couple of more such mega food parks in the state of Gujarat very soon.
Okay, I'll also touch upon another point. The very important point is irrigation, and Gujarat has shown a big success here with their, Sardar Sarovar project, and that is how the agriculture has grown in Gujarat. So how would you say that we can replicate it for the country, because irrigation is a very important thing, and how technology like micro irrigation can also help?
Every year we are adding almost 2.5 lakh hectares area under micro irrigation. We have a big scheme. We have a dedicated special purpose vehicle called Green Gujarat Limited, and that company is providing support to the farmers. They have empaneled list of companies which are providing sprinkler and drip irrigation sets to the farmers. And very aggressively, Government of Gujarat over the years is investing in this field of micro irrigation. I can tell you that about 11 lakh hectare has already been brought under micro irrigation. Our farmers' cost of cultivation has gone down. They are taking multiple crops. Though Gujarat is a semi-arid kind of area, we have difficulty in availability of water. Also, we have given some kind of incentives to the farmer that if a farmer is applying for a farm electricity connection and if he adopts micro irrigation, he will be given priority. So that is how government is promoting adoption of micro irrigation by the farmers, and farmers have really benefited. As a matter of fact, not only food grain or oil seeds, it is the horticulture crops which have benefited most out of micro irrigation schemes that we are running. And I am glad to say that our CAGR for horticulture crops is about 25% for almost 7 years at a stretch.
Professor Vasant, how do we now, we have a problem in agriculture of fragmentation of land, all mini. So how would we manage this whole system of agriculture, and, that also helps in food processing? Coming from a management institute, what is the kind of management that we need for agriculture here?
Yeah, let me tell you that this is a tough sector. No? It's not an easy sector. No? A success doesn't come very easily. There are lots of failures in this, and particularly because of the vagaries of weather influencing agriculture, no, and the costs of procurement that are there. No. A good business model is extremely important. No. And those companies and enterprises which come up with a good business model are able to do well here. No, and from our research, what comes out is that a couple of conditions are there. Couple of things have to be done in order to make a good business model. One of the most important things is reaching out to farmers, no, and organizing procurement from large numbers of them. Lots of our companies shy away from this. Because of that, their cost of raw material is very high. So this is something that they need to build. The second thing that they need to do is how to get the right quality of the produce. You know. For that, they need to work with the farmers to transform agriculture, to bring new varieties, new technology into their practices so that the right varieties are produced. You know. This is followed by good processing. No, okay. These days, consumers demand high quality. No, poor quality produce, unsafe produce cannot be sold. No, so companies need to invest in the best technology. No, for processing. This requires financial resources, no, working capital, variety of things that the model needs to provide. No, and then a strong marketing effort. No, extremely important. And then finally, satisfying all the stakeholders, no, because there are a number of stakeholders involved: the farmers, the processor, the consumer. No, satisfying all the stakeholders is extremely important to make a success out of this industry. But even though it sounds very difficult, there are some great success stories that we have. Amul is one. No? Suguna Poultry is another one, big success story. Pepsi has also done very well. No? ITC Chopal is another one, which have really overcome these difficulties to make a success in this industry. And I think we must learn from these, no, in order to build better systems for other foods, no, and for the future.
Yes.
Yeah, from a social business standpoint, we've been exposed to farmer groups, aggregating farmers. We're talking about fragmentation of farms and so on. So bringing farmers together, small farmers together, having somebody entrepreneurial to drive it, somebody from the village who knows these farmers to drive various productivity enhancement things, right from seed to market kind of thing, helps empower the farmers, improve their productivity, and also plan for their collection in terms of collecting their produce. And that kind of feeds into the food processing chain as such. Now that's been quite successful. One example I can state is in the chocolate industry. Mars Chocolate, which is the second largest chocolate manufacturer in the world, requires, I mean, the world requires something like 6 million tons of cocoa, right, for chocolate. But there's only 4 million tons. But by bringing these farmers together, providing them good practices, good inputs, and aggregating mechanisms, technologies such as what we're using, they've been able to meet the demand. And you need to have consistency of demand, consistency of supply, quality, traceability, and all those kinds of things. So when you actually bring them all together in the chain, and technologically link all these value chain players, there's a contribution and a value for value exchange. And that's been successfully shown, and we're doing it in smaller areas in Cambodia for paddy, for vegetables in Nepal, and so on. So aggregating farmers and technology helps you create a database of farmers and their land holdings, their crop patterns, their forecasting of how their cropping is going, and so on and so forth, so that you know, as a food processor, you know what is going to come when, and therefore plan accordingly.
Mr. Hussain, when you were in FCI, you had brought in a lot of private participation in warehousing. So now warehousing is open to 100% FDI. So do you see private participation coming in, and how important is private participation in this sector?
The Government of India came out with a scheme under which 10 years guarantee is provided to private entrepreneurs for setting up warehousing facilities for Food Corporation of India. The country has already created 12 million tons of storage capacity for these food stocks of the government, and another 3 to 4 million is under construction. So as far as the problem of warehousing for the government is concerned, one can say that in most states it is already addressed, even though there are some districts, especially in eastern India, Bihar, Jharkhand, etc., which do not have sufficient warehousing. And also, all of you would be reading in the papers that there is a very strong opinion that government should not be procuring so much of food grain, and government should be giving direct cash subsidy to consumers. If that happens, and if the procurement of the government itself goes down, then the warehousing so created may not be needed. Also, I must address one issue which was raised by Dr. Kohli of BRIT. There is a lot of misconception in the country which needs to be addressed sufficiently. The losses are definitely not 30%. There are audited accounts of Food Corporation of India which are available, which are in public domain. Year after year they are audited, and the losses are never more than 0.5%. And yet, an impression has been created as if the losses are very high. So we should also realize, and even this 18% loss, I'm coming to this point because it keeps, getting discussed all the time. This 18% loss does not mean that round the year the loss is 18% in every consignment. It is an average for a crop across the country. So in some place it may be 2%. If it rains, on that day it could be 50%. So that's an average. The short point is that as far as the government sector is concerned, the warehousing requirement for the Food Corporation of India is almost addressed. The state governments are creating storage capacity out of the warehousing infrastructure fund of NABARD. As far as the private sector is concerned, they are investing a lot for meeting the demand of non-agri products. And a number of private companies have come up in warehousing sector, which are doing very well. And as the economy grows faster, I think there will be more logistic companies investing in this sector.
But in other sectors like cold storage, everything, are we seeing the private participation
Cold
coming in? Because
storage
I think
is
that is important here.
No, cold storage is a different, I'm happy that you raised this point. See, in case of cold storage, the requirement of the country as done by a study of 2010 is approximately 62 million tons. The country has just about 30 million tons of storage capacity, cold storage capacity. So which means there is a gap of about 30 million tons. In the last 10 years, we have added about 8 million tons, which means we are adding about 1 million ton a year, slightly less than 1 million ton a year. So which means if we continue to grow at the rate at which we have grown in the past 10 years, we take another 30 years to meet the requirement of cold storage capacity, which means there is something very drastic which is required to be done for meeting the requirement. I headed a task force. We have projected the requirement to the government, and I am quite hopeful that the government will consider those requirements, and in the next budget, there should be some good news for the cold chain sector.
So Professor Vasant, again I come to you, is it important for private sector to come in? So how are we seeing private sector participation in this sector?
Oh, very substantial private sector participation is there, and it is a must, no? Okay. I don't think the government can do it. I don't think cooperatives can work in every sphere, no? So that is an absolute must, no? And the only thing is that the private sector will need to be innovative, no? In order to address the various difficulties, constraints, problems that are faced, no? Innovative in a way that we did for telephones, for telephone service, no? That we set up these PCOs, no? In villages, no? So everybody did not need a phone, no? So in that way, the sector needs to be innovative, no? And those innovations have to be in many cases homegrown, no? And solve these problems that are there, no? I mean, the thing that is definite is that the demand for food is growing. The demand for better quality food is growing, no? Demand for food services is growing, no? So it's a huge market, no? And the private sector needs to, work it out, how to address it, no? There is a huge potential.
Okay, Dr. Kevin, you have done a lot of studies in the Asian region about organic farming. So how are we approaching, how's India approaching organic farming? And also, if you could speak about BT cotton, because Gujarat as a state has seen a great success with BT cotton, but there is a lot of dispute across the country about BT cotton. So what are your views?
Oh, I see. On BT cotton, there's a lot of misunderstanding about the role of the BT-ness. So farmers, even though they have BT, they may continue spraying. And cotton is one of those crops, the more you spray, the more pests you get. And it has to be managed very well from an integrated pest management or from an organic pest management point of view. So understanding the cotton ecology is extremely important, and understanding the role of the BT. Because there are a lot of other pests like aphids and stainers and whatnot that are also on cotton that need to be managed, but that has to be well understood. This is one of those areas where extension training becomes really important, or where possible farmers can learn from other farmers who are doing well on that. Going back on like organic agriculture, yeah, there's a huge demand. You can see it all the time. The northeast of India, they're trying to push their products as organic. There's organic coffee, organic tea, a lot of good quality products. As our Prime Minister from Bhutan was saying, high value, low volume. It is a way that a lot of farmers can get into a really nice livelihood. One of the things that they need, though, is good organic pest management products. Now, there is an industry coming up, things like pheromones, mineral oils, soaps, and other insecticidal that other countries have. I come from California originally, and there we have a whole industry. I can call up on the phone, give them my Visa card number, and they send me products that will help me to manage my pests. The same with the soil fertility. Soil fertility is something that has to be managed. It doesn't use soluble chemicals, but it does use different kinds of chemicals. Not chemicals, but different kind of products. For example, rock phosphate. And again, these are products that need to be commercially available if it's going to be commercially viable. So there is an industry that still has to emerge. It's very nascent in India, but it's coming. We hope maybe there'll be a mission on organic agriculture. Already the mission on horticulture is pushing in some of those directions. I'd just like to pick up one point, if I may. Because this is about food processing, FAO has a very strong program called Codex Alimentaris. And this is one area where it's very useful for India because it allows India to trade. Everybody has an international standard. Everybody knows what the standards are. It's very transparent. It's very predictable. But on the other hand, India also needs to be active in the Codex Alimentaris. India has a lot of interesting products. There's a big demand worldwide for halal products, which you can also produce. And there's also your products like chutney. India is the main producer and can set the standards for these types of products. So just for producers, food processors and others here, just to encourage that through the associations, through the chamber, that this is an area that's very good for India to get involved. FAO is an intergovernmental organization. India plays a huge role in the UN, also a huge role in FAO, and we hope that they will continue to play a huge role in this area of food safety and food standards.
Okay, I will start with Firoz. Now, you've been into this business for so long. So take us to the three things that you think that needs to be done in food processing, maybe in the immediate or in the next 1 year.
Kevin just talked about it. Harmonization of Indian food laws. I think this is one thing which we have been asking for long, because I think Indian food laws are sort of in archaic days. And we need to have horizontal standards, vertical standards, because what we now have is recipes. We don't have a food law. We have recipes which were made in probably 50s and 60s. So we food producers have to follow that. And I think we don't need to give a prescription, okay, jam has to be 65% sugar, only pectin. We can have a list of additives, and we are pushing towards that. And FS and the government Ministry of Health is concerned, they are working towards that. But it's happening a little bit slowly. I'm sure it will happen a little bit more fast as time go by. And number two, more important thing which we think we need is that is not from government, but we industries have to do, and that is to make what our PM says, zero defect, zero effect. I think for long Indian food was only known for good price, and time has come when we have to start making and positioning ourselves as the quality producers of quality value-added produce. And we can make India the food factory of the world, not only for curries and pickles and chutneys, but why can't we make even noodles, pastas, and even the foreign products here, and the juices, and everything can be made here. If Thai people can go and make Indian curries and Indian parathas, Malaysians can make, why can't we do everything what the world does? But here we need a little bit more backing and support also from the government. And we Indian companies will have to orient our mind towards these foreign laws. And here also for us to understand food laws of those worlds and ensure that we are able to place our products there is very important. This is number two. And number three is to somehow get in India a culture that processed food is not for the elite or processed food is not bad. Processed food is equal to the food you make at home. Our ladies still today don't think that if they buy processed food, they will feel guilty, or some ladies feel, no, I have to still make the dal from my house, I won't like to buy, I still have to make the chapati. In fact, when the chapati was launched, I thought chapati making will end, but chapati making has never ended. No chapati still. So this is the third area we companies have to work on, the marketing skills, to get a common Indian woman to feel, no, processed food and agri is the same thing. So these are the three broad areas I think we are working towards, and I think these are the three issues.
Okay, Professor Vasant, the three things that we need to do immediately in food processing, maybe within the next 1 year.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is that no one player can solve all the problems. No? That there is a great need for partnering, no? And for networking. No? Different companies can have different strengths. No? So bringing the companies together, no? In order to organize the entire business for different commodities. No? The second very, very important thing is to improve the efficiency of the supply chain. That will require attention on various fronts, infrastructure, and warehousing and reducing wastage, and so on, so that the gap between what the farmer receives, what the consumer pays, and what the farmer receives, is reduced. That is something very, very important. The third thing is that I think in this huge investments are required, and I think foreign investment can play a big role here. Big players can also play a major role in catalyzing the change that we require. Okay? But the economy is very big. The number of consumers are huge. I'm quite sure that there is room for everyone, for all kinds of players, in the country.
Dr. Kevin, the three things that India needs to do in the food processing sector, maybe in the next 1 year.
Just three.
Yes. We'll start with three.
Okay, well, let's just say with small-scale farmers, because of course FAO, we're concerned that large-scale farmers, they can find their expertise anywhere. Small-scale producers, food producers in villages, many dairies and others, they need some extension support. And then I will vote for Prime Minister Modi because he's also talking about they need energy and they need ICT. And without these communication for marketing and without the energy, they won't be able to do their work.
Professor Ram, the three things that we need to do.
The first thing, can we make food processing an attractive business? Why it is not attractive business? Because in the processing, you are getting one material and losing many material. Can we make additional material from the material which you have not been using so far? If you make that also as a part of the food or energy product, then the food processing becomes one of the viable process. What I am trying to articulate here, can we have, so you take a rice, we have a husk, can we make new use for the husk? Can we take a bran, can we make a rice bran? Can we take the same bran, put it in the biscuit and make? That means one rice processing should give an integrated approach. Here it comes, we need to have a skill development to have an integrated approach. This is the first thing which to be done. The second thing, whenever we decided to put a skill development program, it is put in Delhi and even Ahmedabad. That's not the way. They have created a map. The map really indicates what kind of produce farmers are making. They should manage to put a food processing industry at that place and provide solutions for them at that place. If somebody from Gujarat wants to really learn the processing, they go there, that place, and learn it. It is the very important part of skill development with respect to food processing has to be done. This is second. The third part, which I still think, we are talking about food processing. Why this food processing is it? We have a myth in the nation. It is also not only a myth, it is the reality also. We have been saying, the industry is saying one side, processed food is good. They cannot give that statement to the people of this nation. They have been saying processed food is not bad. But can we really come out with the slogan, processed food is equivalent to the food what you are preparing? That they were unable to give. How do we really bridge these two people together? Then the marketing becomes easier for the population. This we have seen it from resistance from many of the, especially middle class people, they always believe cooking themselves. And the reason is very simple, only one. Can the processed food, can you add a health value as a part of the processed food and supply to the chain? That's what industry has to really look at it, which they are really ignoring. That has to be looked at. That's the three things.
Srinivas, the three things.
Yeah, having worked in different countries, including India, I found India to be a little reticent using of technology, for example, in extension management, for example. That could be one thing that could be done, and we've already demonstrated the use of technology for improving extension, helping the productivity of farmers across the crop cycle, various stages of the crop cycle. That's one. Second is getting private mechanisms, public and private mechanisms, and involving the value chain in providing services for each part of the value chain in the rural things. And this includes motivating the extension workers themselves who may be government workers, they see this additional thing that is actually helping them as a burden. Instead, if you can say, if you're working with 10 additional farmers, I will give you 10 additional rupees per farmer or something like that, that incentivizes them to provide value-added services at the end of the thing. And third is financing for crops. I mean, this is probably outside the purview of the food processing sector, but in terms of incentivizing farmers and maximizing their their cycles of production and so on, giving them access to crop loans and stuff which are just not targeted. The financial inclusion of the farmer is very key, and technology can help in that as well.
Mr. Hussain, what are the immediate steps that we need to take in food processing?
Actually, the government organized a very large consultation on the 29th of December, and the recommendations have already been submitted to the government. But I would still like to say a couple of things. Number one, compared to any other industry, the procurement of raw material of agricultural products by a processing industry is more difficult. So if a food processing industry wants to procure mustard, for example, they can't buy from farmers directly. They have to go to 15 mandis, pay mandi tax in every mandi, and in many states, the purchaser has to take a license from each mandi. So marketing reforms, I think, are extremely important if we want the agriculture supply chain to become smooth. The second point is that there are certain agricultural commodities in which the supply chain has substantially improved in the last few years. Apple is an example. A very handsome cold chain capacity, including the controlled atmosphere cold storages, have been set up in Himachal Pradesh, Delhi, and other places. And as a result, the apple farmer who used to get not more than 15 rupees a kilo for apple, this year on an average got 55 rupees a kilo in Himachal Pradesh. So there is a very good supply chain in apple. It has happened in case of apple, which means it has earlier happened in case of grapes. We have seen there is a beautiful supply chain, and the grapes sold in Tesco in England can be traced back to a farmer in Nashik. So it is not that it is not possible. We have been able to do that. More investment is needed, more awareness is needed to create a better, more integrated supply chain, which will also mean reforms at the front end. That means at the retail end. The apple supply chain has improved because the consumers are now willing to pay even 100 rupees a kilo for apple in off-season. After March, everybody sitting in this room would be willing to pay 100 rupees a kilo for apple. Earlier, these apples were not available after February or March, once the season is over. So in the front-end retail also, more investment is required, more reforms are needed. Marketing I have already mentioned. Thirdly, food laws has been briefly mentioned by Feroz. I am not repeating that. There is a need to immediately align these laws and make our processes simpler. And lastly, you may not be aware of this, but as of today, there is inadequate demand for credit. The government of India has created a 2,000 crore fund for food processing, from which loans are available to private sector at 9.5% rate of interest per annum. So a cold chain facility anywhere in the country can access credit at 9.5%. There is a separate line of credit, 1,000 crores for cold chain alone. And yet, NABARD has applications for only 200 crores. So people are not coming forward because of reasons which I have mentioned, because marketing itself is not yet tied up. So unless the marketing is tied up and the chain is smooth, the businesses would not find it viable. And then there is this problem of very high rates of electricity and unreliable supply. So our recommendation is that in the cold chain sector, not only larger investment is needed by the government in the form of grant, but also we need to incentivize by way of some additional grant the setting up of solar projects. In Bihar, a couple of solar cold chain projects, cold storage projects have been set up. There is a very strong need, in our view, to incentivize the use of solar energy in cold storage projects.
Mr. Santosh Sarangi, you have a tough task, to increase our exports. So what is the steps that are being taken?
Well, to take it forward, there is obviously a greater need for bringing in private investment to attain economies of scale. Like we have private fragmented landholding, we similarly have a case where processing industry is also highly fragmented, barring a few exceptions. So bringing in economies of scale would mean bringing in private investment in much higher measures, and also ensuring that they are more price competitive at a global level. Simultaneously, that would also ensure that they have more organic linkage with the farmers to remove supply side uncertainties that the Secretary was just talking of. On the supply side, you have a lot of uncertainty relating to seasonality, relating to volume, relating to the marketing laws that we have. The second thing obviously is to align our domestic standards, our domestic food laws in consonance with the global standards. So whether that means bringing in FSSAI's food laws, whether that means developing standards, whether that amounts to using Codex Alimentarius route to develop Indian standards, is something that we need to seriously look at and do something very quickly. The third thing is to make it sustainable. We need to look at the entire logistic, and starting from stable to the table, as the Dutch minister told in the morning, we need to look at all aspects and ensure that wastage is minimized and our processing facilities are augmented to ensure that India becomes a good processor of farm producers.
Okay. Mr. Rajkumar, what are the steps that you have outlined for the next 1 year?
The whole idea of this seminar was to generate a debate, because we are more concerned with the income of the farmer. After all, as somebody pointed out, that 15% of GDP being contributed by 50% population of this country, that is something we all should be worried about. So the biggest issue before us is that how do we stabilize, how do we ensure that farmer gets remunerative prices for his produce. I'll give you only one example. For example, Mackin is having a facility in Gujarat for processing of potato. So they are a processor, agro processor. Now they have contract farming with our farmers. The benefit of that to the farmer is that they provide seed, they provide technology, they provide extension services, and they buy the produce at predetermined price from the farmers. So that is how I look at the role of agro-processing industry in the times to come to improving the lives and incomes of farmers of our country. Second example I can give you is that of Amul. For example, why Amul is doing so well in Gujarat? Because in addition to the farm, what farmer is assured of, because of dairy, that it is a ATM. That means every day some cash is coming to farmer's household. Though it may be, for 10 liter of milk or 15 liter of milk. So farmer doesn't have to wait for the seasonality of the crop, because seasonal crop means once in 4 months he will go to the mandi and collect some money, So ATM, that is what dairy has become to the farmer. So that is how I look at the processing industry, where farmers' income on a daily basis, farmers' income on a seasonal basis is assured. The last point I would like to make is that unless we improve our markets, and that's a point which also mentioned by Secretary Saab, that our market is so restrictive. Our farmer can sell his products anywhere, but that's only in theory. In reality, farmer cannot go out. He doesn't know how to figure out which is the best price, best place. He doesn't have that kind of transport arrangements with him. So that is where a major reform is needed in this country. We need to, I'm going to say, if I want to start a car manufacturing plant, I don't need any permission. But if I need to buy agriculture produce, I need a permission from a mandi or maybe from the state marketing board. How fair is it to the farmer? So these are the issues which I believe we need to address as a country if we have to really improve the fate of our farmers.
Okay, we hope to see another green revolution in farming and food processing very soon. So thank you, panelists, for joining us. And I would open if the audience wants to ask the panelists questions. Okay, the mic.
My name is Mohit Mehta. During the discussion, it is mentioned that the percentage of farmers is declining because of all the issues we discussed. So, what are the policies of government of Gujarat? To Mr. Rajkumar, my question is to increase the new farmers, because to become a farmer, you need to have a land. Now, if some qualified people want to become a farmer, they can't buy the land. And second question is, for urban need for infrastructure and all the things, the agricultural land get converted to non-agriculture. So how to prevent that? The misuse of fertile land and all these issues. Yeah.
A non-farmer cannot become a farmer in Gujarat. That is how the land laws exist in the state today. So this is part of state's philosophy. For example, the prohibition is a state's philosophy. Similarly, state government believes that the farmer should be engaged in the farming profession, and non-farmers should not be allowed to get into the farming. Second question that you have is about urbanization and conversion of agricultural land into non-agricultural land. This is part of the economic trajectory that we have taken. If we have to generate high-value employment, then naturally you need to bring in industries. That is where the Make in India campaign is all so important for us. So I don't think we can slow down the process of conversion of agricultural land into non-agricultural land. Point is well taken that productive land should be avoided so far as possible. But most important thing is that if we have to ensure the food security of this country, then we have to improve our productivity, we have to minimize our wastages, we have to improve the income of our farmers, we have to ensure that number of farmers who are leaving the farming profession, because probably they are better off as laborers in the urban areas, which is not good. I mean to say it may be good for generating employment, but it should not mean that people should abandon agriculture. That is not good for our country. So we need to bring in better technologies in agriculture, and we need to support it by way of credit, we need to support it by way of better income to the farmer, remove the restrictions on the marketing of agriculture produce so that agriculture becomes, if not as remunerative as the urbanization is to the people, but at least for the sustaining the rural economy and for ensuring our food security, I believe we need to continue to support agriculture.